everyone. Welcome back to another Table Talks episode of breaking down an article. I started thinking more about this concept of breaking down articles, and I, you know, became more of an advocate of doing this because we are living in a time where, it started, probably decade ago, where people just only, read a headline and think, oh, like I could just, limit myself to knowing just only what this headline is saying and not, read the article or, essay that they are, trying to argue for or argue against regardless. But I wanted to do this again. A friend of mine sent this article to this group of ours titled, "What is Total Boomer Luxury Communism?" And it's Hey everyone, before we continue the segment, don't forget to subscribe, like, dislike, leave a positive comment, leave a negative comment. I don't care. Thanks for watching, and now on to the program. It sounds funny, initially reading it. I kind of chuckled at it. But then I started to read the article, and I was like, yeah, maybe I should, do a breakdown of what this is as well. This isn't nearly as long as the breaking down TechNet Ohio that we did. That article was extremely long. I still baffle at myself that I even, decided to do that. But here we are, So what is Total Boomer Luxury Communism by Russ Greene, written on The American Mind, a publication of the Claremont Institute. So let's look up Russ Greene real quick, actually. Russ Greene, Executive Director, Prime Mover Institute, blah, blah, blah. He has a LinkedIn profile. Nice. Public Affairs, Defense Policy. All right. Seems just like a columnist for The American Mind. Let's look up the Claremont Institute real quick, because I don't know if I'm familiar with the Claremont Institute. I may know of them, but it's a think tank for the study of statesmanship. Honor the memory of Charlie Kirk. About our film. Let's just read their about real quick. The mission of the Claremont Institute is to restore the principle of the American founding to their rightful preeminent authority in our national life. The return to limited government. Conservatives must return to principles of the American founding. Kind of funny that my friend Anthony sent me this, because he's very much left-leaning when it comes to identity politics, but he knows how to play the game for sure. I'm eating sour. Sorry, it's Friday. I'm in a slap happy mood because I got some good stuff coming up. Interviewing Professor Terry Grundy tomorrow on my condo, so that'll be cool. I don't know if I'll be dropping that first Wednesday or this coming Wednesday. We'll see. Just got a lot of good stuff coming up. Anyways, so but I say it's funny that my friend Anthony sent us this article, because this is obviously more of a conservative, right-leaning conservative think tank. Nothing wrong with that. Identity politics is not something I agree with. I wish that shit would burn down. But anyways, let's get on to it. What is Total Boomer Luxury Communism? The invisible driver of America's decline. For half a decade, the right has debated free market fundamentalism. This phenomenon This phenomenon is also known as zombie Reaganism, libertarian neoconservatism, and neoliberalism. Whatever you call it, it never happened. Whatever you call it, it never happened. That is to say, the reduction in government expenditure and size that Reaganites promised and liberals feared turned out to be a mirage. What happened instead is that starting in the 1980s, both parties set the country in a course toward Total Boomer Luxury Communism, TBLC. Sounds like a news station. TBLC, tonight on TBLC. TBLC is driving every aspect of American decline, from skyrocketing national debt to the erosion of our defense the erosion of our defense industrial base to the despair of young people. It's not the only reason for the decline, but to be sure, but it's a major part of the problem. Yet TBLC has been entirely obscured from view. Sorry, I'm reading too fast for my own brain to catch up. I'll slow down. The essence of TBLC is that it redistributes wealth from younger families and workers to seniors who are, on average, much richer. America has achieved the Marxist paradise of hunting in the morning, fishing in the afternoon, rearing cattle in the evening, and criticizing after dinner. Only it looks more like golf in the morning, horseback riding in the afternoon, drinks at the social club in the evening, and a restful night's sleep on a $1 million home. All thanks to the lingerie of the U.S. government. Okay. It's been common for some time to see AI memes about how much easier the boomers had it. Quote unquote, my dad lived in a 4-bedroom house on a coal miner's salary, but I went to college and can't afford DoorDash. The old right usually responds to these sort of claims with some facts about economic growth and median income. They wonder sometimes out loud, why don't these young people appreciate what the conservative movement conserved? There's a kernel of truth in this. Just look at Canada if you want a glimpse of an America without a conservative movement. Too often, though, defenders of the conservative movement take it for granted that America preserved a free market system and constitutional government through the Cold War era. Typically, our situation is compared with the centralized control of the CCP being the Communist China Party. If this comparison is accurate, however, it's hard to see it in the data. In his book Breakneck, Don Wang, Asian names are funny. I'm sorry, that's rude of me. Don Wang observes, all names are funny. I'm not anything. Don't take that any sort of way. Nearly 3/4 of China's population are spread from paying income tax. Low taxes make China stingy on welfare. Around 10% of its GDP goes towards social spending, compared to 20% in the United States and 30% among more generous European states. China's pension and healthcare spending are much lower than that of other rich countries. Interesting, I did not know that. I'm learning a lot about China recently. I learned that, and I don't know, this is obviously very surface level of how much, I've been learning. But I heard that, to compare the United States to China in regards to status, people here, I guess majority of society here in the United States believe that status is seen with wealth, or more specifically like cash. The more money you have, the higher status you have within society, which is true to an extent. Versus China, status in China is based off of a system where you start basically at the lowest of the low, which isn't to say that, the lowest of the low is like, some like, war torn wasteland. It's just, you start at, go like you'd start off in your little village, doing some sort of work that contributes to the village. It could be like, a trade or something where you are like managing, whatever. And the more you can be relied on in that, position, you will then earn a position within the broader community. Say, like, you start off in like, a village, and that position within the village turns into a position within like the city. And the more you prove yourself within that city, you then earn a position within like a certain region or the state of within like the area, ultimately leading to a position within, the their federal government per se, which is a pretty interesting concept to think about, because obviously that doesn't happen here. The higher you go, in a sense, you do obtain a certain amount of, wealth and whatnot, but you also are subject to, so much control around you of those who are, way wealthier than you. You are, you could be a millionaire, as a sort of, a government worker or elected official, but you're also surrounded by sharks of, the billionaire class and whatnot. So, and they're lobbyists, and it's like, ugh. I mean, who knows how that works in China too? Like when you start to obtain status within the broader government itself, who around you, I mean, I wonder. I'll have to look more of that up, honestly. Anyways, continuing on. In fact, Wang's comparison understates how much more the American government redistributes wealth compared to China. America is 3 times as wealthy per person as China. So the U.S. spends at least 6 times as much per person on social programs as China. And most of it goes to seniors. And there's this graph here. I don't need to show it really, I guess. I mean, I'm going to include a link to the article in the bio of this, in the description of this video, so you can click on it there and view everything. This graph is from Chris Pope of the Manhattan Institute. Who is Chris Pope? Overextended retirement stay, executives. All right, this is a totally different article that I'm not even going to get into. Anyways, there's 6 times as much wealth redistribution happening in America as China. That's the communism. That's the quote unquote communism, but only for the boomers. The luxury part comes in how the government distributes these benefits. Perversively, retired millionaires have become the greatest recipient of government aid. Wow. Max Social Security benefits in the U.S. are 3 to 4 times what seniors can ever hope to achieve in other developed nations such as Britain, Canada, and New Zealand. These are allocated by lifetime income, so the greatest Social Security benefits go to wealthy individuals who need them most. An individual can take in over $60,000 a year from Social Security alone. Wow. Meanwhile, Medicare programs are paying for golf balls, greens fees, social club memberships, horseback riding lessons, and pet food. On average, retirees are much wealthier than younger generations. I believe that. Maybe that's because they didn't really have much to spend on. You think about it, just like with the amount of stuff we have access to, I used to be terrible with spending money. Like, I would spend on just the dumbest stuff for no reason. And I think it's because of just the how like the market just, how the market can manipulate an individual, not just like the market itself, but like how marketing and can manipulate an individual. Like things just look so cool, you want this, you want that, and it's like, even with my mom and my dad being who they are, very good with their money. Especially my mom, she's been in security. She's been working with investment executives in the banking industry, in wealth and asset management for basically all my life. And she's currently basically my wealth advisor, a financial advisor, and even with that resource, it just goes to show like how, you as an individual can only be given so much help and advice and support. And really, it's just, at that point, it is up to you whether you utilize it or not. Life is very much is a two-way street. I can definitely say like it was my fault. Was it my fault? I don't know. Regardless, I got to continue on. The metastatic growth of the American federal government took place largely in the absence of congressional deliberation or even public notice. Let me reread that. The metastatic growth of the American federal government took place largely in the absence of congressional deliberation or even public notice. Okay. For a brief period in 2013, centrists and center-left commentators in the mainstream media admitted that the entire federal budget was biased against young people. In the Trump era, though, this fact has been memory hold, and progressives instead talk about increasing Social Security spending by tens of trillions. That's interesting. The facts on the ground about distribution and redistribution sit uneasily next to our popular perceptions of political polarization. Nearly 3/4 of U.S. federal spending goes on autopilot without congressional review. Commentators often lament how divided sorry, I don't know words. Lament how divided Americans supposedly are. But this is true. What percentage of the federal budget do the two parties actually fight over? Only around 15%, it seems. The last year in which majority of the federal budget went to so-called discretionary programs, which Congress actually reviews, was 1974. Just like, is that like why? Like that, it just goes back to like the main argument of mine is that there's not just, it's not this group of people controlling everything in the background. It's just the amount of people that have so much authority that goes just like unaccounted for. Not that they're making like, not it's that they're making decisions, it's that like there's just like so much unaccounted authority, like it just trickles down so much, and it's like it goes unnoticed, yeah, but it's like the word I just think about is just like it's unaccounted for, like, and not that I don't think it's even like they're deliberately doing it knowing that it's unaccounted for. I think it's just where do you get the people to start accounting for all this? Like, who can actually account for all this? How do you know you're not going to get someone else who's, going to be, who's, you have this system of checks and balances, but at some point you're going to get people who all like, commingle with one another that aren't, doing the actual checks and balances that is supposed to be happening in the so-called eyes of like justice, or like, people want to use that term to just replace it with God, essentially. Like, where is God to like do the actual bidding of what goes on here? Like, that's what it all comes down to. Like, checks and balances had only worked for so long until those who needed to be checked were balancing out with everyone else. I'm not even going to get into that. Let's just continue with this. In other words, Democrats and Republicans agree in at least 85% of federal spending, mostly because they both support a massive wealth transfer from young workers to seniors. There is no political debate in Congress or even online until recently about total boomer luxury communism. I get where the term comes from now. Europe's economies are less robust, so they've already had to confront these truths. Germany's chancellor has declared that its welfare state can no longer be financed. France has been locked in an intense political fight over raising the retirement age. But in America, our politicians act as if we can finance an ever more generous retirement state, despite our much higher military spending, an aging population, plummeting fertility rates, stagnant economic growth, and $38 trillion in national debt. It's so messed up. All of that is just like literally like we're talking about people's lives, like retirement, like it obviously, like I can't imagine like the amount of people, my age, younger, a little bit older, who are just, going about their day-to-day lives, just like trying to suppress the idea of, what their lives are going to be like in the future. Like that's the most messed up thing that I think has been put upon humanity, specifically like the average person, is that the average person suppresses their thoughts of their future because they don't want to think about it. It's because of like how, like, regardless if it's like, if, people have a natural, phobia maybe of thinking about the future. Now it's definitely more about, I don't want to think about my future because I can't like think about retirement. I don't know how much money I'll have. Like, it's specifically about this time. It's not just, this human feeling of, that we've always felt, fearful of the future. Like, that's very different than, fearing for the future right now because you don't know if you're going to be able to support yourself or even survive. Like, and that's what it all comes down to. Like, dude, oh my God. The last major Social Security reform occurred when President Ronald Reagan signed the Social Security Amendments of 1983. This legislation saved Social Security from imminent insolvency by, I don't know if I said that right, by raising the retirement age, slowing benefit growth, and increasing taxes. Since then, American politicians have let Social Security grow on autopilot. New Zealand, Canada, Germany, and Sweden all reformed their revisions of Social Security during this period. The U.S. did not. As summarized by Avery James, Reagan's successors failed to control the massive elevation of government in payments to the elderly, creating a powerful constituency to move the country's parties and politics away from debating smaller or larger government. The GOP did betray Reagan's legacy, but that process began a lot earlier than 2016. Much of the stale intro-right-wing debate referenced above conflates Reagan with his espionage. That's not espionage. I don't know how to say epoj. One second, people. Sorry, my idiocy is growing. Let me see how to pronounce this word. Hi, girly. This is girly. Dude. Epigon. Cool. Conflates Reagan with his epigons. Okay, let's get you down. Go, Francis. Today, most Americans have no idea how their tax dollars are spent. I've been literally asked this to Thomas Massey. Asked this to Senator Slotkin. The tax dollars, man. Where are our tax dollars going? I'm not going to get mad. For example, 91% do not know that Social Security benefits can reach over $60,000 per person. They have no idea that a senior household can collect nearly $117,000 a year just from Social Security. That's fucked. I don't make that much. $117,000? And if you tell people that Medicare programs cover golf balls, greens, fees, social security, social clubs, ski trips, and horseback riding, they stare in disbelief. Oh, how dare you! Literally. Oh. Zoomers and millennials may overlook America's massive social spending because they largely don't benefit from it. Literally, we don't. It doesn't feel like it. They just pay for it. As Chris Pope explains, the U.S. increasingly costly entitlements for middle-class retirees result in substantial redistribution away from younger workers. This generational injustice is compounded at least 4 times over. 1. Government taxes the young and transfers their wealth to seniors. 2. Government borrows even more to transfer more wealth to seniors. 3. The government debt causes inflation and slows economic growth, eating away at young people's incomes their entire lives. And 4. Government taxes young people again to pay for debt incurred to pay for senior entitlements. As Peter Thiel recently observed, boomers are strangely uncurious about how this is not really working for their kids. If all you can say is that Mamdani is a jihadist, communist, ridiculous young person, what that sounds like to me is that you still don't have any idea what to do about housing or student debt. If that's the best you can do, you are going to keep losing. To illustrate Thiel's point, with one among many key examples, discussion of housing costs often completely ignores the cost of total boomer luxury communism, focusing exclusively on supply restrictions. Yes, it's true that what government regulations and zoning restrict the supply of housing, and demand increases due to population influx, prices go up. But our nation's policies are heavily biased toward keeping seniors in homes that are more spacious and nearer to major employers than they would otherwise be. To the housing market for young people in D.C., the median staff assistant in the House of Representatives earns $55,891 a year. Deputy press secretaries do a little better at $67,541 a year. Meanwhile, the nation's capital is ranked number 10 on the list of the U.S.'s most expensive large cities, requiring over $78,000 a year just to afford basic necessities. It costs about twice that much to live a decent life. The average single-family home costs over $749,000 a year. $749,000. And many of the DC homes selling for under $1 million are located in high crime areas and not suited for young people wishing to start a family. Ward 3 of the district, by contrast, is gorgeous and relatively safe. Its third line street and accommodating backyards give it a calm suburban feel, even though it's still close enough for a reasonable daily commute to the city's major employers. It has long been the official policy of the U.S. government, however, to help retirees stay in homes there as long as possible. For example, D.C. is home to NORCs, or naturally occurring retirement communities, also known as senior villages. We've turned prime real estate for young families into walkable nursing homes. In reality, natural occurring retirement communities are anything but naturally occurring. Total Boomer Luxury Communism helps these seniors stay in spacious homes for larger than they otherwise would. Like almost everywhere else in the nation, DC offers special tax breaks for senior homeowners. This encourages them to stay in their homes despite their spare bedrooms despite the spare bedrooms, instead of downsizing the selling to younger families. Nearly every state has special subsidized for senior homeowners, from exemptions to freezes to deferrals to help them stay in place. It gets worse. Medicaid long-term care exempts home equity up to $1,097,000 from means testing, and the Federal Housing Authority provides Americans aged 62 or older a special home equity conversion mortgage, allowing them to turn home equity into cash without additional monthly payments. Often this transfers the burden to their heirs. Dude. Insane. If we don't radically overhaul America's entitlement regime, our entire nation will become a naturally occurring retirement community. Total Boomer Luxury Communism is tangling the country in a web of contradictions. America now depends on a steady flow of new workers to pay seniors increasingly generous benefits, but it also pays people not to work and discourages family formation. The system is at war with itself, literally. This is low-key what's going to be the cause of the Civil War, a Civil War. America's entitlement system will change radically within a decade, if not sooner. The money is running out. The only question is, who will bear the burden? Each day that passes means Gen Z and millennials pay more of the price for boomers' irresponsibility. Aristotle reminds us that revolutions occur when there is an injustice distribution of honors, offices, and privileges of citizenship. It is time not for revolution, but for reevaluation of how we as a nation distribute these burdens and privileges. We can only fix total boomer luxury communism once we recognize it for what it actually is. That is a great article. I back that so much. I can't agree more with this, honestly. It is the fact that the generation before us is getting all this money due to these policies that were created by Reagan, essentially, to just allow them to continue to collect, at minimum $60,000 to up to $117,000. Something about Medicaid long-term care exempts home equity of up to $1,097,000. Dude, and I have, like I've been preaching, my new mantra is, disrupting the establishment until peaceful dissolution, so the power is truly back in the hands of the people. This is definitely it. Like this, at least this is one thing that is foundationally, part of why that can happen, why a revolution can happen, something like this. Literally, the quote, to quote Aristotle, reminds us that a revolution occurs when there is an unjust distribution of the honors, offices, and privileges of citizenship. Like we see that we've been experiencing that for decades now, almost a century now, probably. So great article, highly recommended. I'll put the link in the description. Russ Greene is managing director of the Prime Mover Institute. Great article written by you, Russ Greene. Thank you for that. And yeah, thanks again, guys, for taking the time to watch this. Girly, get down before you knock down the camera. Thanks again for watching this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends and family. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching. It means a lot. Don't forget again to subscribe, like, dislike, leave a positive comment, leave a negative comment. I don't care. Thanks again for watching. We'll catch you next time.